Hello, this is Reverend Don Lewis, and welcome to Midday with Reverend Don. And I hope you're having a lovely day wherever you are, and whatever platform you're on. If you would like to take part in our conversation, you can type directly into that platform. It will appear in my chat room, and we can interact. So feel free to make any comments that you would like, ask any questions you would like, and we will have a lovely mid-afternoon chat. I very much enjoy this conversation every day, and you never really know where it may lead. A lot depends on what people choose to put into the chat room. Some days we end up being very philosophic, some days less so. And I usually start out as I'm going to with some of the things that I have been doing. And over the weekend, I have placed for sale a number of the originals for the Tarot of Hecate artwork. And we have some of them right here that I can show you. This is the Hierophant, already sold, going out probably later this afternoon or tomorrow. But if you're interested in any of that original artwork, the major arcana are $40, the minor arcana are $25, except for court cards, which are $30. And hello to Mary in the chat room. Mary, it's good to see you. And we also have the softcover version of the 5 Mystic Secrets Multilingual Edition that has come in over the weekend. And these will be going out to those who've already bought them later today, and they're available to those who are interested in them through CorellianPublishing.com. And this particular book is available in 8 languages, or rather it contains 8 languages. You can see them listed. And we're calling it a Corellian Rosetta Stone for that reason. And hello to Lori in the chat room. And Mary says that she is so bummed she missed the Patreon chat yesterday because she fell asleep. Well, I'm sorry, Mary, but you're here today. And what Mary is referring to is that every Monday night on my Patreon, we have a chat room. The chat room has been going on one platform or another since 1998. Originally, it started on about.com. And it has evolved with us over the years. Now it's on my Patreon. And it's one of a number of things on my Patreon. We also have a monthly newsletter. We have a monthly seminar. We have a monthly surprise offering. And we have a tier that includes a monthly consultation. And you can choose what you would like. If you wish to join my Patreon, you can find it at revdonlewis.com. If you're looking for ways to follow my work or to support me, Patreon is a wonderful choice. Hello to Lori in the chat room. I received the birthday gift from you and Chad. Thank you so much. It's very much appreciated. And as I think people know, my 60th birthday was this past Sunday. I have survived, and I'm heading into the 60th year with full steam ahead. I hope that you will enjoy the journey of the 60th year with me. And I'm hoping to, as I get more settled in here, to bring you a wider range of the things that I'm doing. I was talking last week, I'm looking for my next art project, separate from Corellian Publishing, but something to do in my own time, either sculpture or painting. And I'm open to ideas of what people might like to see. You may remember prior to my move, I was talking about Nabamun Hunting Birds, which is a bas-relief version of the famous Egyptian tomb painting that I've been working on for like 10 years, actually. But that's also because there were many years where I did not work on it. But I got it finished. It's hanging in the front room here, which will also be the filming studio as we get into more and more filming. And I'm looking for other projects now to do for my relaxation project. I'm one of those people who finds artwork to be a meditation, and therefore a wonderful thing for relaxation and rejuvenation in my personal life. So I'm looking for that. Also, I have a number of projects, of course with CorellianPublishing.com that will be going forward, and so there'll be lots going on. Last night in the chat room that we were talking about, one of the things that was suggested was that we got on the subject of how people dress and present themselves. And it was suggested maybe this would be an interesting topic for today. I'm also thinking maybe color might be an interesting topic for today, because you see I'm wearing my purple suit, and I love my purple suit. But what is the effect of the colors that we wear? And I am one of those people who believes that color very much does have an effect on us. Angela Munn, the sacred grandmother of the Correllian tradition, posts um, a color divination every day on our Correllian and other platforms, telling people what is the most auspicious color for the day. And one of the reasons is because the colors that you wear and or surround yourself with do have an effect on you. For example, you'll notice my walls are a blue-gray color. And what is the effect of that blue-gray color? It's almost like a French blue, but a little bit more gray. And my answer to that is that this is a very calming color, a very emotionally restful color. And it's one of my favorite colors for that reason. Also reminds me a little bit of an oncoming storm, which I've always found to be an energizing experience also. So it's both restful and has that energizing quality for me at the same time. So it was a wonderful thing to find a house that was already painted that color. And Julia says, "Good evening." And she loves to wear the color orange. Orange is the color of creativity. If you're wearing orange a lot, I would think you're having a lot of creative and passionate experiences, things that you're passionate about, things that arouse your creativity. Orange is going to favor. And orange is a very dynamic color. And orange, again, it emphasizes passion. It can emphasize romantic passion or creative passion or intellectual passion or any kind of passion, but nothing involving the color orange does not involve passionate emotion. It is very much a dynamic, passionate color. The color blue tends to be about communication. Can have to do with emotion in the sense of communication. Blue, of course, corresponds to the throat chakra and the third eye chakra, depending on the shade of blue. For those people who think in terms of also a thymus chakra, it falls in the same category. And of relationship to blue, I think the thymus is usually thought of as teal because it comes between the throat and the heart. But it would be considered a minor chakra. But in some traditions, it has more importance than others. But blue deals with those issues of communication, also willpower and self-discipline. So the issues that come with those chakras go with the color blue. The darker blues have a lot to do with receptivity, particularly psychic receptivity, but receptivity in general. Purple is spirituality. Wearing purple opens you to spiritual influences, particularly can open you to spiritual messages. And this is why you see purple so often in spiritual contexts. It has that particular facility. Green is emotion in the ordinary everyday sense. Any sort of emotion can be positive, can be negative, but it has to do with emotion, with the heart, also with growth and with prosperity, which this speaks to the relationship between prosperity and emotion, which is often overlooked. But for example, if you're looking for growth in what you're doing, green is a good color to wear or to surround yourself with. If you're looking for being more emotionally open as opposed to emotionally receptive, green is a good color. Pink is often associated with romantic love, but then pink also has a lot of cultural connotations. I like the color pink well enough, but I am very much aware of the connotations that I don't always consider positive, which have come to be connected with it. Hello to Janet in the chat room, but other people's mileage will vary on that. And pink is something that you would wear more for, I would say more for romantic love, also perhaps spiritual love if it's a pale pink. Yellow is success and relationships and interacting with others. Yellow is a very good color for when you want to make a strong, good impression. It is a color of victory, of success in situations. And red is color of vitality, color of energy. And if you're doing something that perhaps you might find exhausting, red may help you to keep up with it. Red is one of those colors I think you have to be careful with in interior decorating, although it does get used, but it will tend to make for a very invigorating room. Some people find it too invigorating. The same can be true for orange and yellow as well. It depends on the person. And and it's also important to remember that people have their personal associations with color also. Black is a protective color. For some people, it also is a strengthening color. It's a very grounded color. If you're looking for protection, black is your primary color. White is kind of an all-purpose color, but it's also the color of being open to influences, where black is the color of being more closed to unwelcome influences. If you dress in white a lot and you find you're having unwelcome influences, you may want to bring in some black. Gray is a color of balance. And hello to Bradley in the chat room. There is a wonderful old book. It's in my library, even after the downsizing, and it's called Yesterday, Today, and Forever by Jean Dixon, who was a famous psychic, but not necessarily a famous astrologer. But this book is a hybrid of astronomy, or of astrology and numerology. And it analyzes birth dates according to both the sun sign and the numerology of the day. And I've always found that fascinating, and I found the book to be highly accurate. And for me, for each day, she talks about colors that go with that day. And for me, the color blue-gray is actually the color that she recommends for my particular birth date. And I've always found that very, very accurate for me. And hello to George in the chat room. Good to see you, George. And George is one of my oldest friends. We met, I believe, in first grade. We knew each other for many years, and we have reconnected, and it's wonderful. And I hope that we can actually physically see each other soon. Hello to Anna in the chat room. Hello to Quasar Rose in the chat room. And it's good to see everyone. And all these different colors, it applies across the board. If you look at the colors of stones, they'll have similar characteristics. As a general rule, if you use colors in connection with chakras, in connection with interior decorating, in connection with whatever, as a general rule, the same colors and symbolism will obtain. There are, of course, other schools of thought. There are always other schools of thought. It doesn't matter what you're talking about. There are always going to be other schools of thought. And I think one of the things we must always bear in mind is that no matter what the subject, someone will think differently, and it doesn't necessarily make them wrong. It makes it different. It's so easy to think, well, I understand it this way, it works for me, it must be the only way. But I'm a great believer in the idea that it's actually how we look at it that determines what we see. And two people can look at the same thing from different vantage points and come away seeing something different. A famous example is people who witness a live event and then report differently on what they saw. This is often the case, for example, in the case of crimes. Witnesses don't always perceive themselves as having seen the same thing. And there have been studies where um, situations were staged for witnesses who were then found to have had a somewhat different recollection versus what actually was staged for their benefit. But I say this has a lot to do with the angle you're looking at it from, and it's true of everything. And so we must always remember that. And Laurie says, I've always been fond of cornflower blue or periwinkle. And this is a very gentle, calming color. It's one of the blues, so it has to do with communication. But it also would be a calming and balancing color, kind of like the blue-gray. Um, and I think this is a particularly good color for people with very dynamic personalities because it helps to bring some of that peace and calmness around them. And definitely one of my favorite colors as well. Although I have to say I love all colors. And at different times in my life, I have favored either very colorful wardrobes. I mean, I'd have to say that given what I'm wearing at this moment. Or I've been accused of wearing nothing but gray. And in fact, when I look in my closet at present, it's gray shirt, gray shirt, gray shirt, gray shirt. Partly because when I lost so much weight, I happen to have smaller clothes from an earlier wardrobe when I did wear primarily gray. But the reason I did that at the time was that I wanted to stabilize the emotions in my life. I wanted calmness, and gray will bring you increased calmness. And Janet says, when I paint a room, first I sit in the center and just let colors flow through my mind. I think that's an excellent way to do it. And kind of let the room tell you what it wants to be, let your higher self tell you what it wants for that room. I think that's an excellent way to make that choice. One of the things I notice, since we're speaking about the use of color, but let's talk for a moment about the use of design. One of the groups that I belong to is Historic Homes of America, which focuses mostly on Victorian homes and shows photos of the exterior and interior, mostly of homes that are on the market, sometimes not. Sometimes famous homes that are available to be visited. But one of the things I notice is that, to me, most of them are wildly over-patterned. I do realize that's a Victorian thing, but I find that too many patterns tends to make me feel jumpy. It's a little too activating in terms of the energies. Some patterning is great, but 20 different patterns in one room is a bit much for me. I think a lot of people would agree with that, but obviously they didn't always, because that's exactly what the Victorians did. And if you look at Victorian decoration, it's an odd mix between that extremely energizing use of patterns on every surface, and then absolutely stuffing the rooms full of furniture and decoration, which has the opposite effect. So they were creating a balance, but in their own very unique way. And Quasar Rose says to Laurie that they love that same blue. Yes, beautiful shade. I do sometimes like patterns. One of my shirts, I don't think I've worn it on this broadcast yet, but I have a disco shirt from like 1978 that I've kept all these years. And to say it's highly patterned is an understatement, which was true of the disco shirts in general. But it's one of the few occasions when I like a highly patterned thing, and it's partly from nostalgia. Generally, I like solid colors. And I think it's because they impart a greater calmness. When you use a lot of patterns, you're energizing the room or the situation. And of course, it depends on the person which of these they prefer. I do, however, tend to like pinstripe suits. I think that's just a little bit of Gomez coming through. I was never particularly fond of pinstripe suits until the Addams Family movie, but since then, I have quite enjoyed it. But you know, these are some of the things I'd say about color and about its effects on people. But the conversation in the chat room actually started with the Parliament of the World's Religions and how people dress there, and why dressing a certain way can be important. And the way that you dress does get a certain reaction from people. Now, one of the things we were talking about is the use of clerical collars. And Sir Edward is kind of famous for wearing the clerical collar when he travels because it causes people to treat him differently. My old mentor, Pete Pathfinder Davis, had a story about that. And I think I will share that. He had a situation where he was having trouble with his electric bill at the Aquarian Tabernacle headquarters. I do not now remember what the problem was, but I believe they'd charged him for something they should not have charged him for. And they went back and forth by phone for a long period of time. And finally, he decided to go in person and talk to them. But before he went in, he put on his Roman collar and his black suit. And lo and behold, this problem was resolved that afternoon with very little difficulty, because the way he presented himself got a certain reaction. Pete had another story about this, and that was the story of when he was first made a member of the Washington State Interfaith Council, which was a huge watershed at that time. I believe he was the first pagan archpriest to be on any interfaith council in this country. We're talking 40 years ago. But there were people in his local pagan community who felt he should not be there, and they made a complaint to the council, despite the fact that in taking this seat, Pete was representing only his own church, the Aquarian Tabernacle, not the whole community. But they still felt they had some reason to make a complaint. And so the council scheduled a hearing because they were sensitive to people's complaints. And Pete said that he was very concerned with what was going to happen. Was he going to lose this opportunity because of this complaint? And so he got dressed in his tweed suit with, or his tweed jacket with the leather elbows, and came in for the hearing. And the other representatives of this other group came in dressed entirely in black with large amounts of silver jewelry. And he said that he knew almost immediately, watching the members of the council as they looked from him to them, back to him, back to them, that the choice would be in his favor, no matter what they said, because he had spoken the language the council understood. He had presented themselves in a way that did not put up a wall to them. And while there's nothing wrong with the way the other group were dressed, it was not particularly effective for this purpose. Starhawk, in one of her books, wrote about how if you're going to address this kind of entity, it's the time, if you're a woman, to get out the pearls, if you're a man, to make sure you're wearing a suit, because it will get through to them. They will understand that. Whereas if you come in looking too alien, they'll have a much harder time understanding what you're saying. This is something we've talked about a lot in terms of interfaith language as well. If you speak with a lot of jargon to people who don't know that jargon, you're putting up a wall. It's much better if you can use words they also understand. And then you can say, as you go through the conversation, now, in our tradition, we would call it X, but most people understand Y. But if you begin by using the term they recognize, it will cut a lot of difficulty out of that conversation. And you can talk about the differences that you would use at a later point. And this is often true, that if you meet someone first as a person, hello to Jason in the chat room. Jason gives the example of prayer versus spell. And another example might be service versus ritual. But if you're speaking to someone and you know they have no background, I think you'll find it much easier to communicate with them if you begin with familiar language. I've heard people describe spells as prayer with props. But if you just begin by using the words that they're unfamiliar with, especially if they're words they're afraid of, you're putting up a wall. It's much better not to put up that wall because you may never be able to bring it back down, but to approach them gently from a place they understand and then expound on differences. Another example from Pete Pathfinder, he talked about how when he first met to Index, or when he first moved to Index, he made it a point to introduce himself to all his neighbors, but not as Pete the Witch, but just as Pete Davis, their new neighbor, and to get to know them through low pressure interactions. And then as they found out what the Aquarian Tabernacle was, and as he used interfaith language to approach them, they were far more accepting than they might have been otherwise, because they already had a context for him, and it was not that of other, it was that of neighbor. And I think that we avoid a lot of problems sometimes by meeting people where we find them. One of my mother's favorite expressions. And so, and Janet says, my work clothes are mostly gray, so it makes sense to me now to keep balance in a very busy place. Yes, absolutely. And these subjects that we've talked about are all the same subject, actually. Interfaith language and the effect of color may not seem like they're the same, but actually they are. They're how to attune yourself to your situation in order to take the best advantage of it. By understanding the effect of the colors we wear, we can use them far more intentionally than we might otherwise. By understanding the effect of the language we use, we can use it more intentionally than we would otherwise. You know, back in the days when I did a lot of psychic fairs, I wore particular colors to those fairs for a long time. Well, initially I wore the color black a lot, and black is protective. And when you're first learning to do this kind of work, you want protection and grounding. But as you get better, you'll be able to do that quite effectively yourself. And Patty Parker, hi Patty, says that she completely appreciates this message. Even as a new person to the tradition, she was often lost with terminology. And yet this is something we must be more sensitive to. That people don't necessarily understand what we're saying, and we need to try to make sure that we make ourselves understood. And of course, I'm guilty of this like everyone else. It's a natural human thing. When you have specialized language, to forget that others may not know it, but we need to make an effort to remember that others may not know it. But as I was saying, when I started reading at psychic fairs, I wore black for quite a while, and then I realized I really wanted more of an openness, and so I started wearing powder blue. Now, this was back in the 80s. Powder blue was, well, I still wear it. I can't say that I don't, but it was a more common color at that time. But I started wearing powder blue suits because I was wearing suits for this purpose, which I don't think will surprise anyone. But I started wearing powder blue for the purpose of increasing my communication and also my openness to messages. And I found it was very helpful. After a few years of powder blue, I started wearing red. Because I was doing so many readings, it was becoming overwhelming and I needed extra energy. So I started wearing red as a regular practice to psychic fairs, and I found that I did find myself more energized. And so I would tell you that the colors that you wear have a strong effect on you, whether you're conscious of it or not. And these are some examples of how I have used that in my life. Now, when I say red, it was really more like a burgundy, because, you know, at that time, finding a red suit was not particularly easy. I could find it easily today at mensusa.com. And so one day you may see me sitting here in a red suit. But in those days, it was burgundy. But it's the same energy, just a little bit more subdued, and a red shirt. So I highly recommend making a practice of consciously choosing your colors and using them accordingly. And with that, I want to thank you for being here today. I love this time with you. I love all of you. And I love to see you in the chat room. And I love those of you who are not in the chat room. It is the highlight of my day to spend this time with you. And thank you so much, and let us close with our prayer. Divine Mother Goddess, Divine Father God, beloved ancestors, we thank you for all that you do for us in our lives, and we ask you to be with us and to guide us as we go forward. Help us to see what is around us and to attune ourselves to the good and to carry it forward, and to find the most effective ways to accomplish our goals. Beloved Mother Goddess, beloved Father God, beloved ancestors, we thank you for this and all the things you do for us. And knowing you're always with us, still we thank you for your presence. And may you be blessed now and always. And I thank you for your presence. I love you all very much. And may you be blessed now and always. And we will see you again tomorrow.